All right, hey there, folks. Even though convention signings and other live events are back on track, I figured I would keep bringing book tour to you. So, welcome to Russ's Rockin Rollercoaster, intriguing interviews with creative minds. Well, thrillers are one of my favorite genres to read, to watch, and to write. So please welcome tonight's guest, the international best-selling thriller author Matthew Farrell. Having sold more than 500,000 copies worldwide, Matthew is the author of the Adler and Dwyer thriller series and more. Welcome, Matthew.
Hey, Russ, thanks for having me. Happy to be here.
All right, good. Just a heads up to the folks at home. Feel free to send me notes or questions you have for Matthew in the chat box during the show, and we'll get to a few at the end. Okay, as we always do, we're going to start at the beginning. Where were you born? Where'd you grow up?
I was born in Peekskill, New York, which is about 45 minutes north of Manhattan, and born and raised until I was in my early 20s and moved to Philadelphia.
Slow down. You're skipping over all the good stuff. All right,
Sorry, man.
All right, hang on. Okay, Peekskill, I know it. Although I'm in New Jersey now, I'm a born and raised New Yorker myself.
Okay.
Know it well. So, all right. So north of Manhattan. So what was the lineup back then? Did you have brothers, sisters? Was it just you? Like, what was the situation?
I am the oldest. I have a sister who's 5 years younger and a brother who's 11 years younger.
Okay, so like me, the oldest of three, but you had a real gap between you guys. So because of that age difference, I'm assuming for the most part, you guys did not go to the same school. So you were probably like a school ahead, probably. Is that right?
Yeah, so my sister and I we went to Catholic school, grammar school. So they had kind of K through 8. So we
Okay.
were in the same school there, but not high school and not my brother.
Right. Okay. So how did that work? Was just because of the age differences, did you guys was it really more like, did you just have your kind of separate lives? Like what was the dynamic like?
Yeah, I mean it was the 70s and 80s. So we were the generation of get on your bike on Saturday morning
Yep.
at 8 a.m. and get home before the street lights come on, and if you want to eat lunch or snacks or whatever, you're on your own, or swing back by the house and grab something. So we kind of had our separate lives in that aspect of it.
Right.
We were pretty, at the end of the day, we were a pretty tight family, but we all had our separate, because of the age differences, like you said, we all had our separate groups of friends and we all kind of did our thing. But, Peekskill back then was, it was just kind of a big neighborhood hangout, especially, back in the day. So, we would see each other riding our bikes on the streets or playing in the woods or whatever the case may be. But yeah, we had our own groups.
I laugh because you say playing in the woods, because when I was two houses in from the corner, and right across the street were the woods. And me and my buddies were like, it was right in between the main road and the highway. And we'd be out there, playing war and doing
Yeah, exactly.
stupid
Building
things,
forts.
building forts, and sort of staying out of trouble, sort of. So what did your parents do? What was their situation?
So my mom was a stay-at-home mom. My dad was a police officer, which is where I get all these cool police procedural tidbits in my books.
Okay, so he was. So was he on patrol? Was he a detective? Like, what was his
Yeah, so
situation?
he worked in Peekskill for a little while, and then he worked in Pleasantville, which is another town, maybe a half hour south of Peekskill. He was a patrolman for most of his career and then retired as sergeant. But cool little tidbit, in 1980, he was shot 4 times at point blank range.
Jesus.
Yeah, coming in on a bank robbery in town. And the robber,
Wow.
he was coming on scene, and the robber was coming out. And my dad grabbed him, not knowing who he was, and kind of put him against the wall. And the guy kind of had the gun like on his side and just like fired 4 shots into him. But my dad had a bulletproof vest on.
Oh, wow.
Literally saved his life, because he took a bullet through the arm. That was the only flesh wound. The 2 went into his chest that hit the vest, and then when he turned to fall, one hit his radio on his side.
Wow.
But back in 1980, bulletproof vests were voluntary, and my mom kind of made him wear one. So
So your mom saved your dad's life.
exactly. And my dad, in extension of that, has helped save the lives of however many hundreds or thousands of officers who have had a bulletproof vest protect them, because he became the poster child for making mandatory vests throughout the country. So he was one of the
right?
yeah, he was one of the examples of a handful of officers that this has happened to back then. So I remember as a little kid, going down the city and going to press conferences and, kind of watching him, not understanding what was happening, but kind of being part of it. And yeah, he ended up being one of the stories that, the police departments across the country told and the politicians told, and finally, turned the vest into a mandatory piece of equipment.
Wow.
Yeah, pretty cool.
Wow, that's really something. I mean, to the degree that you remember that your dad talked about, when he was, shot, I mean, vest or not, I can't imagine that's pleasant. Did he like say anything about, just that moment of, someone is, I mean, they're this close and pow, 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 pow. I mean, is it a moment where it just happens so fast you don't know it? Or was it a moment where like, oh my God, like this could be my last moment on earth?
So he doesn't, to this day, doesn't talk about it that much.
Yeah.
And he's kind of from that generation where you kind of just swallow all that stuff and deal with it internally.
We don't talk, we have ulcers.
Yeah. We just have heart attacks.
That's right.
So, but he did, the couple of times he's opened up a little bit about it, the impression that I got is that it happened so fast he didn't know what was happening. And then when he was on the ground, he understood what was happening. And then he got up, and when he got up, he kind of scared the robber because the robber didn't think he would get up. And then the robber ran into the woods behind the bank where behind the building where the bank was. And then by then backup came and, they got him. But, he never said this, but I get the impression that he thinks that if he didn't get up, maybe there were 2 more bullets in the chamber that, the robber would have, and, finished the job or whatever the case may be.
Wow. Well,
yeah.
so, I mean, so into his mind, staying down actually maybe saved his life.
No, getting up saved.
Getting up. Sorry.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. Wow. Crazy. Okay. So what is that like? So as a kid, having, your dad as a cop, and in particular, one who was actually shot that close. Did you have that? Was there that fear for you or your siblings, your mom, like, I never know if dad's coming home, or did you just not, any day, or did you just not think about it? Like, what was that like?
So my dad was kind of like a action hero before the 80s action heroes were around. So he was always kind of coming home a little banged up. He'd come home in a neck brace once. Oh yeah, I rolled my police car during a chase, whatever. So
really?
Yeah, so it was kind of, I didn't. I can't speak. I'm sure my mom was constantly in fear of it. But for me, I never really thought twice that, that he was in danger or wouldn't come home or would get hurt again. It was kind of like, I think once you get shot 4 times at point blank range and survive, you're kind of just like, all right.
I'm good.
Exactly.
Oh, wow, that's trippy. Okay, so wow, you've got an action hero for a dad. Your mom stays home. So what were you into as a kid? Like, what was your jam? What kept you busy?
Atari and Star Wars.
I think you were shadowing my life here. Atari. What was your favorite Atari game?
Pitfall.
Pitfall was the best. Oh my God. When you're running through the thing and you have to drop down and jump over the crocodiles and you swing. Oh, I used to play that game.
There was a bunch of hidden screens that you had to do.
Oh my God. I haven't thought about that game in years. I loved Pitfall. And then you'd go through the layers and you'd almost there and then you die. I think I start all over again and do the whole thing. Oh God.
Yeah. But we were, we were always outdoor kids. I mean, I played sports, but I was never really good at them.
Okay.
But that's kind of what you did back then. Everybody
Yeah.
kind of played sports.
Right.
And then, just get on your bike with your friends and go. Like figure out what kind of trouble you're going to get into that
Yeah,
day.
I really kind of I lament this quite a bit because my kids are now at that age, and there's a park right around the corner from my house. There's never any kids there ever.
Yeah.
Kids are everything is scheduled, right? It's
Yeah.
always an activity. There's no like, I mean, I shouldn't say none, but there's just not a lot of, all right, you came home from school, you dropped off your bag, you got a snack, and then you left.
Right.
It's just, it's just, in my mind, it seems worse. It's just different, but I know it's part of that, well, back in my day, this is what we used to do, but it's not my day. But there seems to be, and I don't know if you have that same feeling about it, but I do feel that there's a loss of, I don't know, of adventure, of self-exploration. Like that's also part of like how you learn about who and how you are by just going
Totally.
out there and seeing what happens.
Yeah. I mean, I've got I have two girls. They're older. They're 18 and 23, 22. Don't tell them I didn't know that off the top of my head.
Mum's the word.
But and they were the same as your kids. Everything was scheduled. They had even just hanging out with your friends was a scheduled play date of a drop off and pickup time and the whole thing. I definitely think the kids these days lose a little bit of that imagination. We would get out there with literally like a beach ball, a stick, and like a roll of duct tape from somebody's dad's garage, and we would figure out how to make a game out of it or something.
Totally.
So
you
lose a little bit of that. You learn kind of how to be social on a level of you never knew who was. A big hangout spot for us was around the corner from where I lived was a middle school. And in the front of the middle school, it was all concrete. So that's where we would play like kickball, or we would play, ride our bikes there. And in the back were two fields that we would, play baseball or whatever. And there were always people outside of our friend group coming in and out of the school to do the same thing. So just from a social aspect of it, some of them were bullies, some of them were cool, some of them were from all the way on the other side of the city, but went to school there. And so you kind of developed a skill of like meeting new people, reading them, knowing how to react to them, depending on what kind of vibe you're getting from them.
That's it. You can't look, you can't substitute, kids now, it's all screens and whatnot. And you're right. There is sort of its own vibe to that because it's its own language, but you can't replicate physically being with other humans and reading their energy and their body language. And it's a whole different way of like human interconnectedness that I think maybe it's a little bit of a lost art. So let me ask you, so school, what was that for you? Were you a deep in the books kid where you were like, school is not for me? Like, what was the deal?
I was an abhorrently horrible student. I hated school. I hated learning. I'm one of those learn by doing type of people.
Yep.
As I got older into my high school years, I skipped school more than I went, to the point where social workers had to meet with my parents to make sure I, stayed in school.
Wow.
I was in the late 80s, I was a, heavy metal drummer in a band. I had, the hair and the earrings and the whole thing. And I was just loving life outside of school. But the one thing that I absolutely loved was English, and I loved writing. So it's weird. Like every other class that I took, I was either purposely taking like an easy, remedial something, or I was struggling through a core class because I just didn't care. But in English, I was like, if I was able to do work in the other classes, I would have been in honors English. Like I just loved, I took a I took a Shakespeare class as an elective as a senior in high school. I
Right.
barely graduated on time, but I couldn't get enough of the Shakespeare class and creative writing and
Yeah.
English in general. And I just loved it. So it was a really weird, asterisk on my career of school.
Well,
But
so go back for a second. I'll tell you why. So I'm a drummer also,
okay.
uh, but I was not a heavy metal guy. I'm more of a classic rock guy. So what kind of metal was your thing?
Oh, we were anything and everything. So we were, the classic, Metallica,
Okay.
Slayer, Anthrax, Megadeth, and then like the weirder stuff like
War.
Celtic Frost, MOD, SOD, just kind of like we're anything that had a speed metal beat to it
Uh-huh.
and we could bang our heads to it, we
So
were
were
there.
you a double bass drum?
I tried. I wasn't as good as I should have been for my fandom, but
It's hard though.
it is hard. It is. I've gotten better nowadays.
Oh,
Just
so you still play?
I don't have a set, but I'm
Mm.
always tapping and thumping, like
Yeah.
to the point where coworkers and my wife and whatnot, they're like, Jesus, will you just calm down with the hands? But I can't.
I know. Oh, I know it. It's funny. I spent so many of my idle time, air drumming and whatever. And the thing is, most people think, you're just some dingus, but I'm not. No, I actually do play this instrument. I actually know what I'm doing a little anyway. All right, cool. So let's just talk a little bit about, and I'm wondering if there's a connection because also right behind you is a poster of Halloween. I understand that you are a bit of a horror buff.
I am.
So talk to me about that. So you're a kid, you're into horror. So I have two questions. All right. One, so horror is a broad term because there's all different kinds of horror, right? A, what kind of horror was your horror? And two, why horror?
So what kind of horror was my horror? Is props the number one thing is probably slasher flicks. Friday the 13th, My Bloody Valentine, Halloween, you name it. Um, the Scream franchise kind of just reintroduced my love of horror back when it came out, because for a while there was a little gap in time where there was either no horror or really, really, really bad horror, and then kind of Scream hit that reset button, which was awesome. Um, I'm not in. I'll check out mostly everything. I'm really not into gore and torture. So like the Saw
Oh,
movies
yeah.
and the Hostel movies, they're not really my thing. But definitely anything slasher, I'm gonna at least check it out. And why horror? My mom was a horror buff and a
Really?
horror reader, and I was just born into it. And my sister is the exact same way. My brother is the exact same way.
Wow. So
Uh,
a fam. So hold on. Let me just sort of like take a shift here for a second. So you've got a family of horror fans and an action hero for a dad.
Yes, who has no interest in horror whatsoever.
I'm sure because he probably has enough of it on the streets.
Yeah, exactly, exactly.
Wow. Okay. So for you was horror just movies or was it were you a reader? Were you like a Stephen King guy or
Yes, yes. So Stephen King was my introduction to horror novels, as well as I would say that whole thriller suspense genre, as well as kind of the first introduction of like I don't think I knew it at the time because I started reading him really young, but I think it started to build in my mind like what a character is and what setting is like and what a
yeah.
plot. And I didn't know that but I was just you're reading it and you find yourself really interested in what happens. I tell this story all the time, but in Cujo, there's a huge portion of the book that just describes her husband's cereal company that had dyed their cereal red, and the red dye color was making kids sick. And that's why he had to leave and she had to bring the broken car to the farm, and that's where Cujo was. So today, you would probably take care of that whole thing in 5 to 10 pages. But he wrote, I don't know, 100 pages about it, and it was really friggin' interesting. Like he went on and on about the marketing campaign of the struggling advertising agency that had this that the husband headed that had this cereal company as a client. And so, you can't do that these days, but back then it really, again, without me realizing what it was doing, it was really introducing me to, subplots and cause and effect and character.
So I want to ask you something specifically about King, and I'll tell you why in a second. So Stephen King, obviously his career is now spawned, 50 years, which is kind of remarkable by any measure. For a long stretch, and I run into this, and it ebbs and flows, where there's this big, oh, Stephen King is a hack, he's so overrated, and blah 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 blah. And honest to God, I can understand you don't like everything he does. Fair enough. The guy's written 900 books, fair enough. I honestly don't get. I mean, truly, I don't get where the King bashing comes from. I don't.
I don't know. I mean, it's jealousy, maybe. I know, half the country hates him now just from a politics standpoint, which I won't. But I don't know. I think there's a little piece of it where, because I've seen this through his career. I'm a huge, huge fan of his 70s and 80s.
Yep.
I like the majority of his 90s stuff. And I'd say from kind of Desperation, Regulators, or Regulation, whatever those two books together were. And I think that was late 90s. From then on till now, I've kind of been, touch and go. I don't read every single one that he writes. So, another reason could be there was such rabid fandom. You could be such a rabid fan of his earlier stuff.
Right.
And as he grows and writes a little bit differently, which is what he should be doing, because he's got more to pull from, more experience, and not everything has to be a monster in the closet.
That's right.
I think sometimes, they want The Shining so desperately over and over and over and over and over again, and they want to get scared like they were back in the day. And he's not doing that now. I think maybe that could be a little bit
possible. It's just one of those things where I can understand if you say, this, he's not what he was, or this particular book, a couple of books I didn't connect with, but there's just seemed to be this, convenient, let's bash on the guy. And I never quite get it. But in any case, I don't want to go too long about that. So, but let me ask you this. And again, and I ask this question a lot because, and I've talked about this on the show, I was not a horror guy. Never really was, except for the classics, Poltergeist, because I grew up around the same time. I'm a 70s and 80s kid too. Poltergeist, An American Werewolf in London, Nightmare on Elm Street, The Omen, they're just great movies.
Right.
But other than that, horror wasn't really my thing, but I'm starting to get into it more now. What is it, you said you like the slashers. My question is why? What is the appeal about the horror? And in your case, the slasher, what pulls you into it? I'm just always fascinated by it.
To be honest with you, I think it's more of the suspense of it versus the kill, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, and I'll use Halloween, which is behind me, and it's literally my favorite movie ever. So, I can kind of speak to it. There's very little killing in the actual movie.
Right. The body count's low.
There's no blood in it other than Laurie gets her arm cut.
Right.
So it's not gory, but the whole time you have, for the 75% of the movie, you have Michael Myers stalking these three girls and then ultimately Laurie. And the suspense of that, he's outside her house, he's outside her window, he's driving by when they're walking home from school, he's following them in the car when they're going to the babysitting trip. The girl walks by and you can see him, out through the back door window. That's the stuff that scares the shit out of me. It's not the jump scares.
Right.
It's
the tension.
Yeah, he's there, the tension and the suspense, and he's there and he's coming.
Right.
You just don't know when and how.
Yeah.
And I think that's super appealing to me.
Okay. So I also understand you're a bit of a true crime buff.
Yes and no. I mean, buff is definitely a strong word. My wife and I have a Friday night Dateline date every week that we love. I mean, we do not miss that. So I'm a huge Dateline fan.
Why?
Um, I think the reality of knowing that that stuff actually happened kind of takes my fear of all that shit to another level, right? Like I write about all that stuff. I don't write horror slasher stuff. I write about, you know, people in, someone who got kidnapped or someone who got murdered and, whatever the case may be. And I try to make it as entertaining as I can, but I'm pulling from all that true crime stuff. But it's like safe when I do that because it's fiction. But when you're watching, Dateline or a Netflix documentary or something, true crime doc, you're knowing that that person actually, whatever they're saying happened to them, strangled, stabbed, whatever, that actually happened. There was real loss in that family. And their stories are, they're sad and intriguing. And, it's almost a shame that they're entertaining. But, on the other hand, I've learned things from those shows that I then try to, talk to my girls about just, being careful out.
Oh, right. Okay, fair enough. Fair enough. So I just want to take a quick pivot, and then we'll get to some other stuff. So, professionally, well, I should say, outside the writing, that you're in the finance, or you are, or were, or are in the finance.
I am.
So what kind of, so the reason I asked, so I'm in the real estate business. And so, I kind of specialize on the communication side, but I kind of specialize in finance, on real estate finance. So what kind of finance are you in?
Real estate finance.
Get at it. Are you really? Oh,
We're like the same person.
oh, come on. Are you really?
I'm a commercial real estate lender.
Oh, stop. You are not. Are you really?
Yeah.
Because these are like, these are my clients. Like this is what I do all day. So
I'll
talk to me
text
about
you.
this.
I'll text you my work number when we're done, and we'll do some deals.
Oh my God! For what? Yeah, this is crazy. I really didn't know this. Holy
Yeah.
cow! So I mean, so for example, like I'll so I worked on the team with One World Trade Center, right? The Freedom Tower. So I was in the room with Douglas Durst, and with the Port Authority of New York and New Jersey, and when the governors were battling it out for who was going to be in control and where the money was going. And so what kind of loan, what's the loan structures for you? Are you guys like mid market, small? Are you kind of big loans?
I mean, in your world, we'd probably be considered small. We'll do, by ourselves 30 million and under. And then, in a participation, we can probably go up to, 80, 90 million.
You're just, of all the people I've talked to, I mean, you're the one guy who knows. We are like the same person. This is fucking weird. Okay, I'm glad I asked.
And we're both drummers, but in my other room, I have a guitar that sits behind me as well. So yeah, we really.
All right, you know what? We're gonna have to talk offline here. We got some shit to talk about. All right, so you're freaking me out, dude. I gotta tell you. Okay. Okay. All right. So let's take a little deeper dive into so you're a word guy. I'm a word guy. So talk to me about when you first kind of got serious about writing. Like, when did you get the bug?
So we talked a little bit before about, how I was such a shitty student, and I was a senior in high school. I took a creative writing class just because I knew I would kick ass at it and it would be an easy grade. And the final exam was to write our own short story. And I wrote it, handed it in. And when she handed it back, Miss Lutvik was the teacher. I'll never forget her name. I got a 0 on it. And when I went to her and said, after class, what's the deal with the 0?
Right.
She gave me a 0 because based on my reputation as being the kind of student that I was.
Oh, he figured you ripped it off.
There was no way you could write a story that well. It's impossible. So, I pled my case. My mom called her and said, said, listen, he wrote the story, he writes. And she wouldn't believe even my mom. And the only way she would change the grade is if I sat in front of her and wrote a continuation of the story, which I did, which I got an A+ on. And then I got a 20-minute lecture about how I've got real talent. Don't be an asshole and waste it away with my nonsense.
So you went from I'm failing you because you're a cheater to don't waste your life.
Yes, and she became one of my biggest fans, and
awesome,
biggest advocates, I should say.
Right. Wow. Okay.
And at that point, I knew, okay, I've got actual talent. Like, I've always loved to write. I was writing. Geez, I used to, going back to the scary movie stuff, I used to watch a scary movie and then write my own story based on that scary movie when I was like 10 years old. So it was like, 2 pages of crap, but I was always drawn to writing. And then when I got that kind of wake up call, from Miss Lutvick, then I was like, all right, maybe I do have some talent here that I should pursue. So when I graduated high school, I started writing seriously, and that was 1991. And then my first book came out in 2016. So it was a long, hard journey.
You know what? This sounds vaguely familiar.
Yeah.
Okay.
The nice thing about me knowing that I was born to write is that whole process of, writing and honing the craft and trying to get published and writing many, many books to get to the point where I was skilled enough to be able to sell one. Writing to me is not a chore. It's an enjoyable experience. So whether I was writing in the hopes of getting published, or now I write knowing that I will be published and people will read the book, that joy is the same. So it's never felt like work. I never sat down at the computer and said, oh my God, I gotta write today, this is gonna suck or whatever.
Yep.
I'm always like, raring to go. So
Cool.
I think that's what got me over the 20+ year hump of chasing the dream. Was that I was always willing to write because I just didn't feel it was in me. Like, I didn't feel like it was something that I had to struggle through.
Yeah. So I've heard you talk about this before, and it's the classic question amongst authors, are you a plotter? You're a pantser. Now, I know which one you are, at least I think I do, but I want you to tell me, and then we're going to poke around a little bit there.
All right. So I'm a pantser, and the pantsing has been backfiring on me lately. And I've tried to plot and I can't plot. So my agent says that my process, which is really friggin' annoying, but I guess it is what it is, is I pants my way through maybe 2 or 3 versions of my book until I finally understand who my characters are, why they're doing what they're doing, and what the outcome is going to be. So it sucks that that's my process, because I actually have to write the book 3 or 4 times, not from beginning to end, but depending on,
I get it.
The first couple drafts, it could be anything from, writing 50 pages differently to writing 200 pages differently. But I'll always and sometimes I'll write 2 versions, sometimes I'll write 7 versions. I write until I get to a point where light bulbs start to go off, and I say, all right, I know who these characters are. I know I'm in their minds, I'm in their brains. This is what they're doing. Now I know I'm doing the right thing.
So a big thing for me, and I don't know if you write this way, is, and I'm assuming you can appreciate this. So, being a 70s and 80s kid, I love my dad, for better or for worse, I was watching in the 70s when I was a kid, watching All the President's Men and The French Connection and Apocalypse Now when I was like 8. Maybe not the greatest parenting choice, but it happened. And all that gritty kind of stuff. But I was an 80s kid too. Spielberg, Jaws, Raiders of the Lost Ark, and Star Wars, and Die Hard, and all these big cinematic events. So I love the combination of the gritty street level, the politics and the crime and the grime, but also the big thrilling, action scenes in the big finale. I need to know what the big finale is because I need to know, even if I don't know a lot of the stuff in between, I have to know where the big moment comes because I need to know because I like to, I'm building, 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 boom.
Right.
Do you need to know what that big boom is at the end, or do you just sort of, you just kind of find it when you find it?
So my whole process is really weird, and it's I wish I could. I always say I could never teach a writing class because I don't know how I do it. I just
Right.
so the inevitably it's happened in every book I've ever written, as well as books that haven't been published. I'll be wherever I'm at, in the shower, in the car, working, out to dinner with my wife, whatever I'm doing, a scene will pop into my head. And I don't know anything about, I'll take, for example, What Have You Done? My debut. The scene that popped into my head in that book was a woman was on a chair with a extension cord around her neck, pleading with someone in the corner that I couldn't see because he was sitting in the shadows, not to kill her. And I knew he was going to walk over and kick the chair out from underneath. That was the scene that was in my head. I don't know who the woman was. I didn't know who the guy was. I didn't know why she was in the hotel room, why he would kick the chair out from under.
But you knew it had to be there.
But that was the scene. And
Yeah.
when these scenes strike me, the way I can vet out kind of what's going to be a book and what's not going to be a book is if that scene stays with me for like a week, that okay, this is something I need to fix.
It's funny that you're saying that because in a lot of ways I'm the same way. I mean, what I do is I'm not a traditional outliner, but I'm not a total pantser either. Usually when I write a novel, I spend about it's percolating for, it could be weeks, months, years in the back of my head. But when I know I have to start writing, I spend about a month and I walk the dog. I'm out on the streets. I'm walking in the city back and forth to the office and I'm breaking it down. I'm breaking down the story over and over and over and over, but I don't write it down because if my mind cannot hold on to an idea consistently, I don't have it.
Right.
It's when I can keep coming back to it and it's basically the same, then I know I got it. And then I can sort of build from there. But what I want to ask you next, and this is more process issue. I've spoken over the years, and you probably have too, to hundreds of writers about this. So the majority of writers that I talk to, what they say is they hate the editing process. I'm the opposite. I actually love the editing process because I feel like filmmakers talk about this a lot, who they say they don't even find the movie until they've shot everything and then they start editing. That's when they know what they really have. And I'm the same way when I write. I have a draft. It's as good as it is, or it's crap, or it's okay. But that's when I start peeling away and I can see what I've got, what I don't, where the gaps are, where the logic doesn't add up, where a scene is too long or too short or I'm missing. And I figure out this is how I make it better. How do you feel about the editing, the carving away and the disassemble and the reassemble? Like, what's your take on it?
Okay. So again, the theme of we're the same person. Yeah, it's my favorite part. It's my favorite part. And again, going back to my process of having to get through a few versions until I figure out kind of who my characters are, those few versions I consider editing because I'm not totally rewriting the story, but I'm picking out pieces that work. I'm putting in new pieces that don't work. I'm kind of, I always say it's a block of ice and I'm chipping away to make the ice sculpture. And I'm chipping away at each scene as I go. And so I consider all of that editing, and I absolutely love it. As much as I love writing, and I honest to God love it from the bottom of my heart, writing the first draft for me is the worst part of the best job I've got.
I got to tell you, I'm sort of the same way too. I just want to, it's a classic of, I like to have written more than I like that first, because I just want to get it down. Because once it's there, then I can really start to play with it. But to create, a 90,000 word manuscript out of nothing, come on, man, you're killing me here. I got to figure all this stuff out.
And for me, the entire first draft, I feel out of control because I'm still not sure who's who yet.
Right.
So it's just a feeling of I have nothing under control. I don't even know if this is making sense. I'm just going to keep writing and see where we end up, and then
Right. Okay.
six
Right on.
books later, I'm doing something right. But I guess that's
Yeah.
the process.
So just a quick interlude for the folks who came in a little late. If you have any questions or comments for Matthew, send them in the chat box and we'll get to a few at the end. All right. So just a quick follow-up question on your last point. All in, about on average, how long does it take you from the first day you sit down and clickety clack to it's done? How long on average?
Done as in ready to be published, or done as in ready for my editor to see it?
Either.
Okay, so editor to see it, probably 4 or 5 months, and done probably 6 to 8 months.
Okay, fair enough. All right, so
I'll get through the first draft in about 6 weeks.
fast. I can't do that.
Yeah, and then
try. I can't.
but it's 6 weeks of shit, and then I have to
Yeah, well, that's
rebuild
fair
it.
enough. That's fair enough. Fair enough. All right. So look, as writers, we can be precious about our words. How do you feel about editor or publisher notes when it comes to how you craft the story or a scene? Or are you hypersensitive, or do you say, hey, look, you know what? Are you kind of one of those writers who says, I don't care, best idea wins. I just want the book to be great? Or are you like, hey, I'm writer guy, know your place?
No, I am the complete opposite of that guy, because
Right.
and I think this comes from me being able to wear my business hat in my day job.
Right.
I understand there are people out there who know the market and whose job it is to make my book as marketable and sellable as possible. So if you think I need to do X instead of Y, and I've got, whatever it is at this point, 6 or 7 years of experience, and you have 25 years of experience and 17 best-selling authors in your stable, I'm going to listen to you.
Right.
That's it. And I love notes. I've had some of the biggest twists in my books come from not directly from an editor's note, but I'll read an editor's note and it'll spark something that I never even looked at it that way before.
Right.
Which then created this incredible twist that I never even considered and would not have considered had it not been for that editor's note.
Right.
So I'm open arms with that stuff.
All right, awesome. Okay, that was great, but now it's a time for a special segment on the show where we spin the wheel. On the wheel are 7 possible categories, including a few new ones I created for tonight's show. Wherever it lands is what you get, and the categories are Survival 101, Would You Rather, Soundtrack of Your Life, Stranger in a Strange Land, True Crime Kink, say that 3 times fast, The Reanimator, and I Am Rocket Man. All right, you ready? Here we go.
Right.
All right, round and round, wherever she lands is what you get. And what you got tonight is The Reanimator. This one seems to come up a lot. I don't know why. All right, so where are we? Okay, you have died a gruesome death, but medical student Herbert West has offered to reanimate you with his scary serum. If taken, you have a 50-50 chance of returning to life completely normal or as a zombie-like creature. If, however, you choose to forego the serum, you have a 50-50 chance of going straight to hell. Do you want to be reanimated?
Yes, 100%. I'm a Catholic schoolboy. I'm not messing with hell.
I'm not messing with that. Oh, yeah, bring it on. Bring it on.
Man.
All right, fair enough. All right, now we're going to pick your poison. I've got 3 choices for you, A, B, and C. I'm not going to tell you what's behind each one. Pick one.
C.
C. Okay, C is alt history spoils. All right, so I'm going to give you 2 alternate history scenarios. You can only choose one. Choice number 1. You can pick one key narrative from our history from any point within your lifetime, and you can rewrite the narrative to your liking. But you personally do not get to enjoy the spoils yourself, and no one will ever know what you did. Or choice number 2, you get to be a part of it. Everyone knows what you did, but you personally suffer tremendous losses as a result that would likely ruin the rest of your life, but everyone else gets the spoils. So which alternate life do you pick?
Hey, I can be silent in the background. I'm cool. As long as I'm not, my life isn't imploding, then
Okay.
I go, hey.
Okay. All right. Fair enough. All right. Now I'm going to give you some truths. I'm going to give you some truths here. I got 10 questions for you. You ready?
All right.
So, favorite flavor ice cream?
Vanilla.
What's one food you will never eat ever for any reason?
Liver.
I'm with you. Bucket list destination anywhere in the world?
Italy.
Scariest movie you ever saw?
Scariest movie I ever saw. I'm gonna go Conjuring.
Conjuring. Okay.
It scared me as an adult, which that's saying something.
Okay. If you could have one superpower, what would it be?
One superpower. I'm gonna go flying.
Okay. So normally I would ask you if you play any musical instruments. I know you play the drums, but if you could play any other musical instrument, which one would it be?
Piano.
Yeah. Cats or dogs?
I gotta go cats. I have both, but my black cat kicks ass.
All right. So once again, we're the same. I got a cat and a dog, but I'm still a cat person underneath it all. Favorite cocktail, and if you don't drink, your favorite unwind beverage.
Just a beer, cold beer on a hot day.
I'm with you. You can see if a live performance, sports, music, theater, whatever, any seat, any venue, any time in history. What's your choice?
Beatles, Ed Sullivan Show.
Oh, wow. That's a good one. Yes. Yes. All right. If you could get a continuation of any canceled TV show ever, what would it be?
There was an old show called The Glades.
The Glades. Why do I remember that? You know what? I
It was
remember this.
It was like 1 or 2 seasons, and it was
Yeah.
freaking great. And at the end, they someone, I don't even remember at this point, but someone busts in and shoots the main character, and that's the cliffhanger. And then they canceled the show. Did he live? Did he die? Who shot him? I'm still 10 years later. I want to know.
Oh boy. All right. Fair enough. All right. So now we're going to go to our advice column. What's the best and worst writing advice you've ever heard anyone give to aspiring writers? So this is best and worst.
So the best, which I've given myself, is, don't give up and keep writing. I mean, I'm the poster child of perseverance. It's taken me literally a lifetime to get published. So as long as you keep writing and you keep loving it, don't give up. I don't recall having heard a worst advice. Although, I've heard stories where, not so much these days, but, back in the day, editors would, mail back, notes to a old, used to send query letters out through the mail with a self-addressed stamped envelope, and they'd send it back and say, you should never write another word again. And, just like going out of their way to be nasty about their feedback. So I've heard stories about that, but I've never really heard bad writing advice.
Okay, fair enough. All right. So we'll take any questions from the audience if we have any. But all right. So I wanted to go back, and I don't always do this, but we have a few extra minutes, and I'm curious just because we talked about music a little bit. So so music is a large part of a lot of people's lives. What 5 musical artists would you consider to be the core soundtrack of your life?
Oh. I got to go Kiss #1. I grew up on Kiss.
Okay.
My taste is so all over the place. I'll go Kiss 5, you said, right?
Yes.
Kiss, Metallica, Fleetwood Mac,
Ooh.
the Beatles,
Yep.
and give me a good Go-Go's.
All goes. Wow. Okay. You surprised me on that one. Okay. Fair enough.
I'm telling you, I'm all over the place. I love music in general. I just absolutely.
I swear to God, we were separated at birth. Like, you're really
So, all right, then let me ask you a question since we're so alike.
Okay.
When I'm working, not when I'm writing, when I'm working through a scene, I'm like you, I'll go for a walk or whatever and just kind of work things out. I will put on a suspense soundtrack to
Ooh.
get my mind in the mode of the genre that I'm writing in. So my two go-to soundtracks are Girl on the Train and Basic Instinct.
Ooh, interesting.
And do you do anything like that? You know, music with your helping you along with your writing?
You know, it's funny. Usually no one's asking me questions, but I'll take one. Sure. So I wrote a novel, God, this came out a while ago, called Crossline, which is it's space opera. It's it posits a modern day space pilot is testing out warp thrusters, and if they work, it's going to revolutionize space travel. But for reasons I will not explain, he's forced into a wormhole, ends up in a parallel Earth where he may have been destined for from the beginning. And on that Earth, there's only two factions left. Their equivalent of what is New York City and their equivalent of what is the Grand Canyon. And they have two very different lifestyles, but they're both competing for this one piece of tech, and they think this guy has it. But back on our Earth, his wife and daughter are trying to save his life because his ship was launched by a private space program, and they don't trust the executives. So they are racing against time to infiltrate the tower command to bring him back home because they think they're going to kill him off on the other side. So to write this novel, I listened to Dark Side of the Moon probably 150 times just to have that like constantly, because I wanted that sort of like operatic, creepy. But that's the only novel I've ever done that. And you know, it's interesting. I can't write with noise at all. I need total.
Me neither.
I need silence. I don't like distractions. And it's interesting that you bring it up because I've been thinking about it, about whether or not it's time for me to start getting some of that sort of, you know, genre ambience in the back of my skull, just to sort of like get the creeps up. I haven't, but I think I'm starting to lean in that direction. It's funny that you bring it up because it's actually been, again, it's been on my mind. So we're gonna have to talk. All right. So, all right, folks, I got some to share. I'm gonna share my screen, and give me 1 second. And then we got some good stuff going on here. All right. Close this out. All right, what do we got? Oh, shoot. Sorry, I gotta stop that. Did I do that right? And okay. All right. So what are we looking at here?
So that is the cover of my 5th novel, The Perfect Mother. And it's so what I do with each book is I try to challenge myself to do something different. So in this particular book, my challenge was I want the reader to not have a place in the book at all to be able to close it and put it down and take a breath. So my challenge for this was from page 1 to page whatever the end of it, it's nonstop action and suspense. So it is about a mother who is in her car one day and hears a cell phone ringing from the glove compartment of her car. She opens the glove compartment, the phone, you know, she's never seen the phone before, but it's ringing. She answers it, and it's her daughter on the other end, her younger daughter, who lets her know that she's been kidnapped. And then the kidnappers get on the phone and tell her that she's got, you know, I don't remember off the top of my head, but, you know, 3-4 hours, whatever, to get to a certain destination, or they're going to kill the little girl. And then during that ride to the destination, the kidnappers start to force her to kind of come clean on some things that she's been hiding from others in her life along the way. And, you know, the person that you're introduced to and the mother that you're introduced to in the beginning of the book, you know, is not the person that you know by the end of the book. So it was a lot of fun to write. Took a lot of editing, which again, I love, but really, I mean, we really went out of our way to trim any fat off of this book. So the moment you open it to the moment you close it, there's not really a place to put it down. And you know, the feedback I've gotten from it from readers and fans is, oh, I read it in a day. I read it in 2 days. And, you know, that's the point. Like, I don't want you to be able to put this thing down. Wow. So it's been really successful. It's fun to write. And that's The Perfect Mother.
All right, awesome, guys. Please go pick, if you haven't already, pick up a copy, because God knows I'm going to as well. All right, as for me, keeping on the theme of thrillers, I'll encourage you to check out Fractured Lives. That's the second novel in my ongoing sci-fi thriller series featuring hard-boiled Private Eye Angela Hardwick. In my mind, Hardwick is part Blade Runner, part Fringe, part X-Files. In Fractured Lives, and this was an interesting one for me, Hardwick is approached by a mother who says, please, please, please don't dismiss me. Everyone thinks I'm crazy. I'm not. She's got a daughter who's a freshman at a prestigious art and celestial design school. And she says, everyone's saying my daughter's having a nervous breakdown, but that's not true. The cops think I'm an idiot. Please, please take me seriously. Someone has stolen a piece of my daughter's soul. I need you to get it back. So Hardwick sort of doesn't know what to do with that. She takes the case and she ends up investigating the art world, university politics, and there's the rumor of this an urban legend of the Scarlet Raj. Ooh, you better do your homework or the Scarlet Raj will come to get you. But maybe it's not such an urban legend after all. And it leads Hardwick down the world of shady construction workers um, and a very intense cyberpunk world. And we also learn about Hardwick's origin story because a sort of a mysterious person from her past reemerges, and we really learn how Hardwick kind of got involved in all this craziness to begin with. So just so you know, Fractured Lives, it's part of an ongoing series. There's 4 novels in the series so far, with the 5th coming out in September. They're all standalone thrillers. You can read them in any order. It does not matter. I reintroduce the world building and the characters each time out, so you can jump in anywhere. There is some character development, but if you like the plot, you can jump in and it doesn't really matter, and you're going to have a great time. Fractured Lives is available on Amazon, and it's published by Crazy 8 Press. All right, folks, that's our show. I want to thank my guests and my stolen brother from another mother, Matthew Farrell. And I want to thank everyone who's watching at home. As a reminder, if you haven't already, please subscribe to my YouTube channel and keep checking out the past episodes. And as always, please be gentle, be kind, and generous of spirit. And for God's sakes, go read a book. And I'll see you all on the roller coaster next week for our season finale. That's it for me, guys. Take care.
Guys.
All right. Great to see you. Bye now, guys, and be good.